This is the regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Soboroff, Figueroa, Villa, and Kim are present, and we have a quorum. Number one on the agenda, Commission comments.
Thank you. Do we have any Commission comments this morning?
No, sir.
Do we have any comment cards?
We have one public comment card. We have Mr. Ted Hayes.
Plain English, that's what the law is supposed to be written in nowadays. And there's one term that we have to discuss. That indicates under the authorization to clear the room. The Brown Act says the members, and there's an S at the end of members, making it a plural term, meaning more than one. It says the members may clear the room, meaning that apparently there should be a vote. But Mr. Johnson has been repeatedly violating that. Now, the Brown Act also points out what an action is, and an action is actually a coalescence of the members. If they, for some reason, decide to do something all together without even voting, that's still an action. So the only way I can think that you could possibly get away with doing this is by having a plea of temporary insanity. You're all educated, so you obviously know something about the tenets of the English language and what the term members means and how you interpret that about how the room may be cleared. So Johnson can't simply say, clear the room and walk out. You can't do that. You all have to take responsibility of democratically having us kicked out of here. So there have been 3 occasions where you've done this in the same manner, same conditions, and I thought perhaps maybe the city attorney was giving you bad advice. So I filed a complaint against the city attorney, and I'm going to go to various agencies on that complaint because I'm suggesting he's giving you bad advice. So we have another city attorney here. How are you, ma'am?
I'm good.
And that's a welcome response. Thank you.
Thank you.
And excuse me, Mr. President, we do have 4 additional cards. They were on the way up before I called the numbers. So we have Jamie Garcia, Paula Miner, Davon Williams, and Hamid Khan.
Jamie Garcia with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So this is a little ode on accountability. On the days before Thanksgiving, I think about the almost genocide of Native Americans, and I think of the racism, the stolen land, how as a nation the U.S. keeps itself unaccountable, and the blanket of lies of thanks. I think of you, Sandra Figueroa, and I think, what are you doing to combat this innate racism found in the policing structure? Do you know that Native Americans are the second most killed by law enforcement? I then think of slavery and the blood and toil of the black people that built this country, and the continued silence and unaccountability of civic leaders and this commission to understand the history of policing and slave catching. I think of you, Matt Johnson. What are you doing in the name of accountability? The black community is the #1 peoples killed by law enforcement. There is nothing to celebrate this week, nothing for this nation, nothing for this policing structure. This is a week of mourning. So on accountability, Matt Johnson, when will you be accountable to the sabotaging of the consent decree? When will you see that a hearing and investigation is necessary to understand that Chief Beck and Steve Soboroff lied and hid the fact that police officers broke antennas connected to the digital in-car video systems to not be accountable? Matt, this is the logical request. You will continue the lie if you do not act. We do not want more studies. We know the facts. We want accountability. We want action.
Paula Miner.
Good morning. Last week I spoke briefly about the recommendations made by President Matt Johnson to the Commission. And again, I concur with my colleague. And looking at the 6 recommendations that were made, and I did finally get a printout, most of them are studies and analysis. One is a 10-year study that has to do with what's happened over the past 10 years, which we and you already have those facts. The second one is a national comparison, comparing the city of LA with other communities to count the number of police killings, the number of uses of lethal force. Again, that's a study, that's an analysis. That is really not an action because that information too exists. The third one was a format for an annual report that would just tell us what you already know and what we already know has happened with regard to police shootings, with regard to use of lethal force. The fourth one, again, deals with less lethal options. We have that training and body cameras. The thing that is missing from his recommendation is what is to be done about the most recent victims. What happens to the families and loved ones of Ezell Ford, Brother Africa, Riddell Jones, Norma Guzman? There has been no resolution. Nothing has occurred. No word has been given about those, especially about Ezell Ford, where this commission said that the activities that occurred with those policemen were out of policy. Again, we believe that the recommendations are simply a continuing study. There is no recommendation here for any action. One of the recommendations we would like to add, and which we've repeated over and over again, is to hold some of the commission meetings at a time that is more accessible to the community and in local communities.
Davon Williams.
Hello, my name is Davon. I'm here with the YJC and other people here. I'm here to ask that these meetings do not be held here, but somewhere in our community where we feel more comfortable. We are supposed to be, quote unquote, working together, but as they stand around here, we look like enemies here. You're standing around here, but we do not feel comfortable. We like the meeting to be somewhere in the community other than here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hamid Khan.
Hello, Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition. You probably have in front of you a set of demands that the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition, we passed this letter earlier. The Stop LAPD Spine Coalition, Los Angeles Community Action Network, and Black Lives Matter Los Angeles have submitted. We've been coming here continuously and raising issues of grave concern to the community, but obviously, you know, we're met with complete dismissal, and you continue to ignore without taking any meaningful action. So the set of demands that we have and we're asking you to take immediate action are, number one, move the Board of Police Commissioners meeting time and location that is convenient for the community to attend and fully participate. We demand that these meetings be held in the evenings and away from LAPD headquarters. Number two, the power to discipline LAPD officers should be reinstated to the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners with immediate effect. Number three, conduct a thorough investigation of the sabotaging of the federal consent decree by LAPD officers who tampered with the digital in-car video and audio devices. 90 out of 300 patrol cars were impacted. Number four, rescind Special Order 17 and terminate the suspicious activity reporting, SAR, and the iWatch program with immediate effect. Hold public hearings on the human and civil rights violations and racial profiling resulting from these programs. Both the 2013 and 2015 audit conducted by the Inspector General showed a completely disparate and disproportionate impact on LA's black community and people of color, where the 2013 audit showed 82% of these secret files open on communities of color. The 2015 audit showed that 31% of these SARs that went to Fusion Center were on LA's black community, and the gender counted was 50% black women. So there is clear impact of racial profiling. Number five, we reject the use of drones by LAPD, order the removal and destruction of the 2 Dragonfly Axis drones currently housed at the IG's office with immediate effect, and prohibit LAPD from using drones. Number six, discontinue special policing initiatives such as the Safer City Initiative that are formed to address social conditions and problems that are not criminal in nature. Number seven, stop selective enforcement of neutral laws, racial profiling such as jaywalking, loitering, and open container laws against people who are black and brown in the city of Los Angeles,
Thank you for your
specifically
comments.
in the
Your time
areas
is up.
gentrifying. And number eight, fire Chief Beck.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. There are no other cards on this item. We're on number 2, the report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
A couple things to go over today. One, Last week, we conducted a readiness exercise for Metropolitan Division subsequent to the attacks in Paris. The Police Commission President was there, and I thank him for his attendance. We were able to bring together over 160 Metropolitan Police officers in full gear in under an hour. The first platoon was ready to go within 15 minutes. You know, those are folks coming from home, coming from all over the city to one location. It's a good test. It's just the first of many that we will conduct in order to gauge our readiness for a multi-terror attack similar to Paris. Second, we had our department-wide Christmas holiday party this past weekend. Sold over 600 tickets, over 500 people attended. Was a good event, and was one of the things that we measure for our ability to bring people together. This Friday, of course, is quote unquote Black Friday, and because of that, our malls will be packed. So we will have extra deployment at the malls in order to facilitate the crowds and also ensure safety. Crime, we had a pretty good weekend this past weekend. Unfortunately, we did have one homicide, gang-related homicide in Northeast, but that was the only homicide for the city over the weekend. That's the positive turn of events, obviously. Homicide is still up in the city, a little over 12%. Part 1 crime is also up in total, a little over 12.5%. You know, in my efforts to keep the commission and the public informed on police use of force, I'll go over some of the things that we'll be looking at in our annual use of force update. This is, of course, is not the exhaustive report that will be put out, but this is just a little piece of the things we'll be talking about. So this year to date, we've had 45 officer-involved shootings. You know, and we are, of course, concerned about every officer-involved shooting. Our 5-year average for this time of the year is just under 36. So we've had more officer-involved shootings than our 5-year average. We are below the level that we experienced in our highest year, which was in the past 5 years, which was 2011, and considerably above our lowest year, which was last year. But to put those numbers into context, so far this year to date, Los Angeles Police Department has conducted over 500,000 stops of either vehicles or pedestrians. We've responded to 750,000 911 calls. It's a total of public contacts, either stops or radio calls, of 1.2 million, over 1.2 million. During that time, we've made almost 100,000 arrests. Our total uses of force in those 100,000 arrests are just over 1,600. So it is a use of force versus arrest ratio of 1.7%. In other words, only 1.7% of our arrests does a use of force occur. And the vast majority of those uses of force, well over 1,400 of them, are non-categorical, in other words, minor uses of force. I think this also has to be put into context. Calls for service this year are up considerably. In other words, 911 calls, the level of requests for the public for police to respond are up 8.6%. And number of victims shot in the city of Los Angeles are up 18%. The violent crime level is up a little over 20%. You know, police officers conduct their business in the context of what's going on in the city, and the things that affect violence in the general community also affect the level of violence that police experience and the level of use of force that they exercise. We'll continue in these updates. I think maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about the type of weaponry used in response to categorical use of force, and the initiation points of how categorical use of force, what types of activities initiate them. So
Are they available to the public? Are they available to people attending the meeting? These the updates. I know we get them like the day before.
you will get them the day before. We will, when we do the year-end report, we will make them all available. You know, I think that these things are better distributed in the context of the year-end report. You know, I make them verbally available to the public, and much of this is online. All the crime pieces are online, and the categorical piece is online also. Personnel, we have a graduation tomorrow, which is a very good thing. That will bring our total personnel strength to just over 9,900 for sworn personnel. We have 2,670 civilian personnel, about 400 reserves, 372 specialist volunteers, 61 chaplain counselors, and 6,270 cadets. Also, tonight I will go to one of the badge ceremonies for our reserve class. We're going to be graduating a reserve class in about a month, and they get their badges tonight. So that's a good thing. The civilian volunteers that make up our reserve corps are very important, particularly this time of year.
Do you know how many people are in the graduating class tomorrow and what the demographics are?
You know, I do not have that with me. Obviously, that's available, and I'll make that available to the commission.
Great, thank you. Do we have any comment cards on this item?
Yes, sir. We have 6 cards. We have Prentice Jenkins, David Sanchez, Ted Hayes, Jojo Smith, Hamid Khan, and the Red Chief Hunt.
Morning, Board. Morning, Chief. Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter publisher, activist since 1991. Have a show and tell here. I know you folks like show and tell.
No, he's not. The war of words between him and police union and officers across the country continues. Steve, good morning, everyone. And it all started with a speech at a protest rally called Rise Up October. This is what he had to say last month.
I am a human being with a conscience. And when I see murder, I cannot stand by. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers.
After that speech, several law enforcement groups asked people to boycott Quentin Tarantino's next movie, The Hateful Eight. Tarantino saying this is all an effort.
Okay, that's Quentin Tarantino. When Hollywood gets involved, things move forward. Hollywood got involved during the divestment in South Africa 30-something years ago. Things move forward. This is Hollywood getting involved again, and things will move forward. This is Quentin Tarantino saying, I got to speak out about people who are murdering innocent people. I'm not going to say all of them are innocent, but we know Ezell Ford was just walking down the street. He ended up murdered by cops, by crazy cops. You heard that siren. That's those crazy firemen. Whenever I turn this thing on, they take their trucks and take off. That's how crazy they are. And yes, I have a document from other firemen telling you how crazy firemen are.
Thank you.
Jojo Smith, Los Angeles Community Action Network. Chief Beck, you're a failure. You need to fucking resign because you're not disciplining your officers the way they should be. You know, Ezell Ford was not doing nothing but walking down the street. Africa was doing nothing. Your officers are in our community in Skid Row. City Council said the SEI is a failure, has done nothing but terrorized our community. I live in Skid Row. I've been ticketed twice in the past month for just sleeping. You know, your officer's supposed to give warning. I never got no warning. You need to resign. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Sanchez,
co-chair of the Chicano Roundtable, David Sanchez, Doctor of Philosophy and Communications. I'm here just I've always been involved with reducing the violence in Los Angeles County, but I'm concerned about the justifiable homicide that the LAPD continues to commit. And, for example, the Van Nuys Division, I mean, we've had like 3 deaths over the last 2 months. What's happening at the Van Nuys Division is that they're killing Mexican Americans. Florencio, Miguel Cano, case number 6689. And I'm concerned about what's going on. Is that Fort Van Nuys, taking out some of the poor people? Once again, the methods that you use, you need to find other methods other than using lethal force. The 9mm cannon just was created by the Italians and by the Germans to kill American soldiers. The 9mm is a military weapon and should not be used against civilians. I'm concerned about also the violations that the LAPD continues to commit. Those violations will come before the United Nations. Let me remind you that the Mexican American is a national population, ethnic group registered with the United Nations, and these killings will come before them for justification. Also, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the right of passageway. There was a treaty between the United States and Mexico in 1848 that gave Mexican Americans rights to not be killed and right of passageway. And this is something that I'm concerned about, the right of passageway and inspections. If you remember, the American Revolution began because against the British inspections. And we have too many inspections. Chief Beck brags about, 500,000 stops. Why are they stopping 500,000 people? 500,000 inspections? I mean, come on, the police state is getting too strong and too hard on the poor people. And now it's a psychological warfare against the poor people, and things need to change.
Ted Hayes.
Arrest. Last week, Mr. Hunt was arrested because an unlawful assembly was called. Here's what the jury will hear as what amounts to an unlawful assembly. This is what the jury hears. Not what the city attorney charges or the district attorney charges, but what your jury hears. In the penal code section, it indicates violence 3 times. Violence, violence, violence. There was no violence out there, but the lieutenant called an unlawful assembly. Now, as one person pointed out, when the unlawful assembly is called, next thing comes the batons, the helmets, and the black ski masks, and brutality and shots. That so-called furtive move, reaching for the waist belt. So when he calls this, and he knows very well there's no violence to support that, that's what he's doing. Now, since the lieutenant did that, Chief, I suggest we reduce the personnel strength by 1 by firing this lieutenant. Because what he did was in collusion with what Johnson did. First, Johnson kicks us out. So we're out there in the lobby with the people who could not get in. Why couldn't they get in? Because the overflow room was not open. But it's supposed to be open once this room is filled. But on 3 occasions, people were not allowed to go into the overflow room. So Johnson kicks us out. Lieutenant says we're in the lobby, chanting, perhaps, talking perhaps. We're certainly not violent. Not when the law says whenever an assembly of 2 or more persons assembled together to do a lawful act is not unlawful unless the assembly becomes violent or gives rise to a clear and present danger of immediate violence. We're going to be violent at the police department? Come on.
Hamid Khan.
I want to draw your attention back to this letter that the 3 organizations submitted to you today. Demand number 3 about conducting a thorough investigation, and number 8 to fire Chief Beck. He sits here and brings in all these reports, but, just based on the history, we know that last year one of the commissioners voted against his reappointment. I want to just bring it back a little bit to how the consent decree was sabotaged. In June of 2001, U.S. District Court Judge Gary Feast signed into law a federal consent decree between the U.S. Department of Justice, the City of Los Angeles, and the L.A. Board of Police Commissioners and the LAPD. The consent decree placed emphasis on several areas, including management and supervision, documentation, investigation, and integrity audit. So now, one of the reasons why the consent decree was lifted finally, among other things, was that the department had assured the installation of digital in-car video cameras and other equipment. But the history of the support of the installation of digital in-car video camera goes back to the Christopher Commission after the beating, Rodney King beatings. Then on April 7th, 2014, the LA Times reported that LAPD officers tampered with voice recording equipment in dozens of patrol cars to avoid being monitored while on duty. It further stated that LAPD Chief Charlie Beck and top officials learned of the problem in summer of 2013. This is about 9 months prior to the LAPD's expose, but chose not to investigate which officers are responsible. LAPD spokesperson Andy Smith, who keeps on giving us all this Kool-Aid, stated in the LA Times saying that the total of 160 antennas installed in the Southeastern Division, 72 had been removed. 20 antennas from cars in other divisions were missing as well. So in essence, 92 out of 300 of these patrol cars were impacted. So here we are again, where Steve Soboroff knew of this thing. Chief Beck knew of this thing in June. Steve Soboroff knows of this thing in September, doesn't say anything, continues on with body cameras, brings in another officer, supposedly a tool that is going to monitor officer misconduct, but nothing has happened.
Thank you for your
Nothing has
comments.
happened. So the demand is, when are you going to launch this investigation? When are you going to launch this investigation into the complicity of this man and that man? Time is up for you, but time is never up for us. Because we got to keep on speaking about it.
The Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you again. The Red Chief Hunt here. I've been arrested 71 times. I'm leaving my band on just to show you that I was arrested for unlawful assembly. But that's the second time that I've been arrested for unlawful assembly. The first time, it cost the city $215,000. This time, it cost them probably about $430,000. We're working on the draft now. I'm down here because you guys arrested me for working on a $100 ticket with a sales permit from the State Board Equalization. You guys arrested me, and it's on video. If you go to YouTube and you check out Venice or Butterman Venice on YouTube, you will see more cops around me than Rodney King beaten. And this is to take me off of work off of Venice Beach after winning in the Ninth Circuit. Go to Butterman Venice on YouTube, and you will see 1,000 cops around me taking down the butter stand and saying that I can't, what's the name? And I have a sales permit, you guys, a California state sales permit, saying that I can sell and distribute my product for the last 14 years on Venice Beach and won in the Ninth Circuit. Why would I lose the right to due process? Number one, let me tell you guys why, and I hate to make it sound like this. We have a white mayor, we have a white chief, we have a white inspector, we have a white city attorney, and we have a white state controller. Black folks do not have a chance. I am part of the statistics, and no matter how you look at it, 71 times, and a federal judge comes back and grant me, the Honorable Dale Fisher says, next time you arrest a Ninth Circuit winner, that you have to pay double the amount. This is on the record with the city attorney, and all the paperwork is already on record, and you guys come back and make that decision again, arbitrarily, capriciously, and facetiously make that same decision. Something's wrong with you guys. It's going to cost you guys. My attorney will be sending in the paperwork. Thank you. The Red Chief Hunt.
And that is the last card on this item. Please let the record reflect Commissioner Saltzman is now present. We go to item number 3, regular agenda items. We have a comment card on 3A. We have 2 cards. Would a commissioner wish to pull a special 3B through E?
Let's see. Does anybody want to pull any items? No. You said we have a comment on 3A?
Yes, sir. We have 2 comments.
Okay. So can I have a motion on items 3B, C, D, and E?
Yeah, so moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Those items move unanimously. Let's bring up the report on
3A. We have the 2 comment cards, Prentice Jenkins and the Red Chief Hunt.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. I'd like to know if the South Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement detail is part of this agency here.
DemocracyNow.org, the War and Peace Report. We are on the road in Denver, Colorado. We're broadcasting from Free Speech TV. I'm Amy Goodman. Colorado is one of a handful of states where hundreds of firefighters, paramedics, police, and even corporate employees are being
Jenkins, that
trained
is
to
not on
hunt
topic.
down and report a broadly defined range of suspicious activities. They're called terrorism liaison officers. The federally supported initiative
Want to
trains
make a
them to
comment
look
that's
out for, quote,
on
observed
topic? We're
behavior
happy to hear
that
it.
may
If
be
not,
indicative of intelligence gathering or pre-operational planning related to terrorism. The list of suspicious behaviors includes taking photographs or videos of no apparent aesthetic value, making measurements, drawings, or taking notes, and conversing in code.
Sorry, that's off topic.
And terrorism liaison officers, or TLOs, have been deployed in at least 8 states, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, Tennessee.
Okay, so I'd like to know California. They're deployed in California. Is the Bureau, Operation South Bureau Narcotics Enforcement, part of this detail? That's what I'd like to know. If I can get an answer from the board. If they are terrorism liaison officers.
This report is on narcotics enforcement in the South Bureau of the LAPD.
I know Narcotics Enforcement, Operation South Bureau, Detail Command Accountability. I need an accountability as to whether I'll be here all week. As to whether this South Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement is part of this detail.
And the second card is the Red Chief Hunt.
That was pretty good. That's a hard act to follow. Drug narcotics in the South Bureau. Chief William Scott, you have been doing a great job. I've noticed. I've been over in South Central LA. It's hard to clean up everything. You do the best you can. Don't worry about what you can't. Everything seems to be pretty calm as far as narcotics over there. I've been taking or exploring the South, and you've been doing a great job. Thanks for doing a great job, Chief William Scott, and I hope you continue the command post as Chief of South Bureau. Thank you, Chief.
There are no other cards, sir.
Thank you for your comments.
Too late.
Actually, he hasn't selected. Do you want to begin?
Sure.
Or do you want us to just have questions, or do you want to?
We could start with some observations from the audit, and then ask questions if that's okay.
However you want to do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks.
Would you like for me to present first? Wait for Mr. Hayes?
A mind is a terrible thing to waste. In my neighborhood, the Green Cross is door to door. So our neighborhood council wants to eliminate some of those pot shops, smoke shops, narcotic shops, whatever you might want to call them, because the mind is a terrible thing to waste, and our community is being wasted. I think most of you are kind of acquainted what the effect of narcotics might have on a community, on our nation, and why we have so many laws that are so rigidly against narcotics. The best way to understand narcotics is historically. You must read about the Chinese and the English and the Opium Wars. The Chinese government people always consider themselves to be very sophisticated and very civilized, and they consider the Europeans to be barbarians, believe it or not. But anyway, opium was devastating China, and the government decided that we have to eliminate opium. In parts of the world, narcotics peddling is a capital crime.
Hayes,
You will be executed for doing
way
that.
off topic. Can you bring it back to South Bureau, please?
I beg pardon?
Can you bring it back on topic? You're off topic.
I beg your pardon?
You are off topic.
I'm going to speak my mind, sir. Now, either you can have these guys arrest me or leave me alone. All right. If the narcotics people don't understand the opium wars, if they haven't read on that, they should be kicked off the department. Because that's the highlight, historically, of narcotics in the world. China and the English, who shelled Hong Kong to make them accept narcotics and various other things. So our neighborhood council is making a plea that something be done about the door-to-door pot shops in our community. Thank you.
Chief Scott. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good
You
morning.
want me to start first, or you wanted an overview before I?
Sure, give us an over, however, whatever you think is most productive.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. T. Fank, Inspector, and Chief Beck. We're here today to present the Operation South Bureau Narcotics Enforcement Detail, CAPA. As you're aware, CAPAs were designed to develop and assist managers with operating issues and identify risk management concerns. This is the second Operation South Bureau CAPA that we've conducted. The audit's methodology and objectives were discussed with the Bureau command and staff prior to the commencement of the audit. The audit included an evaluation of the NED unit's work product and daily operating procedures. The audit consisted of 6 objectives and including addressed 14 specific areas. Out of the 14 specific areas, the department was 100% compliance in 4 of the 14 areas. Those 4 specifically are articulation of reasonable suspicion and probable cause to arrest, articulation of search and seizure, magistrate approval of search warrants, and adherence to the financial disclosure requirements. The department achieved an 80% or higher compliance rate in 4 of the 10 remaining areas. Those areas being adherence to the Miranda rights, supervisor approval of search and Ramey warrant packages, adherence to significant policy and procedures, and consistency of information with regards to arrest reports, search and Ramey warrant packages. The remaining 6 areas where improvement is still needed: completeness of the warrant tracking log, the department achieved 50% compliance; completeness of required employee comment sheets, 55% compliance; evaluation of confidential informants, 67% compliance; completion of standard-based assessments in a timely and accurate manner, 79% compliance; officers' thorough and accurate completion of daily activity logs, 59% compliance; and the supervisor's thorough and accurate completion of supervisors' daily reports, 50% compliance. What we did a comparison based on this report and the prior audit, which indicated the areas where the department fell below the 80% compliance were all administrative in nature. The administrative issues would not have impacted the successful prosecution. The findings that we noted were primarily due to completion of department forms where we noted omissions and information not submitted in a timely manner. It is likely that with additional supervisory scrutiny, those issues would be resolved and the findings would resolve themselves.
Good morning, Commission, Chief Beck,
Morning.
Mr. Bustamante, Mr. T. Fank. I'll go basically objective by objective and just explain our response and what we're happy with and things that we think we can improve on. I'll be very succinct. So I'll start off with objective 1. I'm very pleased, and we are very pleased with our compliance in this area. Objective 1 deals with constitutional policing issues, which is very near and dear to the core of what we do. We were 100% compliance in 2 of the 3 areas, 1A and 1B, and we were 96% compliant in 1C, admonition of rights. The anomalies in 1C dealt with basically a couple of minor areas, and although I say they're minor, they are very important because they do deal with constitutionality of law enforcement. The 2 issues were that in 2 different reports, several arrestees were arrested. They all were given their Miranda rights. However, that fact was not documented, or the responses was only documented for 1 arrestee. So even though they were read their rights, those responses weren't documented as they should have been on those 2 reports. This area has been addressed with those specific employees through counseling, training, and documentation. And we will continue to look into making sure that we stay on top of that. Now, as for objective 2, I'm pleased with the results of 2A. However, there are several other objectives, and objective 2 that leaves a whole lot of room for improvement. 2B, completeness of warrant tracking logs. We were 50% compliant, and we lost ground from our last audit in 2012 and 2013. 2C, we were 87% compliant, and even though 87% is not terrible, there's still room for improvement. 2D, we were 55% compliant on completion of employee comment sheets. 2E, adherence to significant policies and procedures, we were 87% compliant. And 2F, evaluation of confidential informants, we were 67% compliant, with 4 out of 6 being in compliance, 2 being out of compliance. I'm also disappointed that we lost ground in these areas from 2012 and 2013. We own this. We've held our folks accountable for, which I will discuss in a little bit more detail in a minute, and we are committed to improve in these areas. Now, our efforts to improve have included having our Operation South Bureau inspection team reassess these areas, and we did that for the months covering October of 2014. We inspected every document for the whole month, and then again for January 2015, same thing. I was happy that our spot inspection showed significant improvement. As a matter of fact, in those 2 areas, we were 100% compliant.
100% compliant in all the categories in 2?
In 2, yes, for our spot audit. So I was very happy with that, but we still have to keep...
Recent spot investigation, recent random...
Yeah, and the period that we reviewed was October 2014, so the whole month of October, and then January 2015 for that whole month. So, again, we plan to continue to do those type of spot audits to make sure that we stay in compliance. But we did show significant improvement. As to item 3, objective 3, consistency of arrest reports and search and Ramey warrant packages, this area also touches upon our commitment to constitutional policing. Of the 80 arrest reports, search warrants, and related documents that were reviewed, 76 were in compliance. So there were 4 that weren't in compliance. And although the issues were administrative in nature, still, we have to pay attention to the small things. They did not have an impact on the investigations. However, they are important to us. The anomalies consisted of the following: inconsistent weights in the arrest report and the property report. In other words, that the weight measures were different on those reports. Inconsistencies with the watch commander's name that was documented in the arrest report as giving booking approval, and it was different from the watch commander that actually signed the booking approval form. There was also an anomaly with the property receipts having an item listed on the property report but not listed on the receipt. So there were 2 of those as well. Again, administrative in nature, attention to detail type of issues that we just have to get better at. And again, 4 out of 80 is not bad, but we want to get better. And we have a high standard and we want to get better. For objective 4, completion of the standard-based assessments, we had a 79% compliance rate. 30 of 38 of these packages were in compliance. Now, the ones that weren't in compliance, we took a hard look at why we weren't in compliance. And I will say that in this area, we improved from the last CAPA audit, in which we were 65% compliant, or 18 out of 34 in the last one. But at 79%, there's still room for improvement. The areas that we found that we need to improve in, everything really can go back to my chair, really, as the CEO of the Bureau, and the systems and accountability start with me, and that trickles down to the areas. When we looked at some of the areas where we weren't in compliance, we had 6 personnel packages that were not in the personnel files at the time of the audit. Of those, 3 of the packages had been, 3 of the personnel, the SBAs, had been done and completed. They were at the old division of assignment. So in other words, when the officer transferred to the new division, that rating never made it to the new division in time for the audit. We have rectified that by tightening up our tracking system. So when somebody comes in and is transferred into our bureau or into divisions between the bureau, we track, we stay on top, we contact the prior division to make sure we get those ratings in. And that should tighten that area up. The remaining 3, 2 of the remaining 3 were actually done, and we found them in other packages. They were misfiled. So that's a human error that we just got to not have happen. But we identified the problem, and that's fixable as well. We just got to pay more attention to detail there. And there was one that we don't have any, we own it, and we just got to get better at it. So we've improved those systems, and we really think the tracking system will do some good in that area in terms of tracking the ratings as officers are transferring in to South Bureau and the divisions within South Bureau.
So all those changes are related to number 4?
To number 4, yes, sir. Okay. For the next objective, number 5. Not pleased with that one. 5A, officers' thorough and accurate completion of detective activity logs, known as DALs. We were 59% compliant. Supervisors' thorough and accurate completion of supervisor daily reports, that's 5B. We were 50% compliant. So the total compliance for all in totality of Objective 5 was 55%. As you can imagine, we can improve there greatly. So we've done a few things to do just that. We've addressed these areas first with the employees involved via the same method, counseling, training, and documentation for those involved employees. And additionally, we've re-inspected this area. In our re-inspection for the month of October 2014 and January of 2015, we were 96% compliance in those areas. So significant improvement. But again, it goes to the system. Now, one thing that we don't want to do is only inspect, or in other words, teach to the test. There's a whole lot of areas outside of this audit that we know indicates how well we're doing in this area. So when we did our inspection in South Bureau, we looked at some other areas too, and we found some concerns that we'll talk about in a second that we dealt with. Objective 6, definitely we're pleased with 100% compliance in that area. So now I want to go through what we've done and summarize this. Although a majority of the anomalies found in these 2 objectives can be attributed to attention to detail both on the officer, detective, and supervisory level, these individual anomalies were addressed with the specific individuals, as I have mentioned, through counseling, training, and documentation where appropriate. There's a larger issue here that speaks directly to our expectation as an organization of the very high standards that we set for oversight of our NED units. And it really forced us to ask the question, are we living up to that standard? Now, these findings, particularly from Objectives 2 and 5, led to subsequent OSB inspections that I just mentioned. And this and a couple of other incidents forced us to take a hard look at our oversight. We saw some concerns in what we found, and those concerns have been addressed. And actually, some of those concerns led to progressive discipline that is still ongoing, personnel complaint. Additionally, it led to reassignment of some of the personnel out of the NED unit to other assignments. And that has been, those positions have been, those officers have been replaced by a new team, including some of the supervisors. So that is a high level of accountability. And we will continue to take that hard look and make those tough choices that we have to do to hold our folks accountable to this standard. One other thing that we've done to improve in this area, we've held 2 training sessions for supervisors. The first one was on January 8, 2015, and the second one was just for NED supervisors on April 1st, 2015. We brought in all the NED supervisors, and we reiterated everything that I'm discussing here. We brought in city attorneys. We brought in myself and Commander Chingarides just to set the tone and let our folks know. We know, overall we do a good job, but we can improve in those areas that I've mentioned, and we will improve. So I hope this response demonstrates our commitment to continually improve in these areas and hold our folks accountable to the standards that you expect and the community expect. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Commissioner Kim had some questions.
I'm glad to see that as to the constitutional issues, the legal standards were appropriately implemented in individual incidents. And I'm also glad to see that the department takes very seriously the lack of diligence in these administrative areas, because we understand that the lack of diligence in these administrative areas are tied to risk management and also potential slippage in other areas that might have greater consequence in these individual incidents. I'd like to understand some of the reasons for the lack of diligence, because I think it's important to understand those. So you mentioned some supervisory issues, and also just the sort of dramatic decrease in performance in those administrative areas as to the previous audit. I think that's also important to note, which you did, Chief Scott. But if you could respond
Yes, ma'am.
to my first question.
Yeah, some of the reasons that we found, number one, it starts with the individual. I mean, we can have all the best systems, and we do have good systems and good rules and policies, but if they are not adhered to, they're no good. And that they have to be adhered to at all levels. The officers, we have a responsibility. The officers have a responsibility. The supervisors have more of a responsibility because they are in charge of the oversight. So when you have breakdowns at the officer level, which we did find, that the attention to detail and some of these administrative miscues were at the officer level. Things like not including your partner's information on your log, or writing in the log instead of writing your own narrative as far as your activities, writing in your log, refer to my partner's log. I mean, those are easily fixable things, but the officers, our expectation of our officers are high, that they need to do their jobs first and foremost. Secondly, the supervisors, when the officers aren't in compliance in those areas, the second level of that safety net, if you will, is the supervisors are supposed to catch that. And in some cases, the supervisors didn't. So particularly some of the personnel changes that were made were because of that. They didn't. They fell short of our expectations, and in some regards greatly fell short of our expectations, and they were removed from the unit. There's no excuse for that, and I won't make any excuse for that. We just have to hold our people accountable. And then at the command level, the same thing. The command level, including myself, we have to have the systems in place to make sure that all these components that I just discussed are working, and that's the oversight piece and the systems piece that we have to continue to drive. When we don't pay attention to those systems, we have slippage. So that falls on my shoulders. We saw some areas where at the bureau level we needed to improve, and we have tightened those systems up. But that trickles down to the area level too. So,
Were there particular divisions that had a higher incidence of administrative deficiencies?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
Can you speak to that? Or
yeah, we had we had with this particular inspection, it was pretty much the administrative deficiencies were across the board. Some areas were higher than others. For instance, there was one area where Southwest had more anomalies. There was another area with 77th. Overall, I think 77th had the most anomalies. And then when we did our bureau inspections, we found some things at 77th as well. And there were a couple of other incidents that triggered us to look in other areas. So there were some changes in personnel at that particular division. And again, no malice, none of that. But it rose to a level where we had to implement progressive discipline. And I think that was the key. Our people need to know that they're going to be held accountable. It starts the chief holding us accountable, Chief Beck, Chief Yeager's holding me accountable, and then down the line. So when we're not performing, we make those tough choices, and sometimes that requires reassigning people and starting over. So, and that's what we did.
I'm glad that the audit continues to serve as a safety valve to identify these kinds of issues. And I'm presuming my co-commissioners would agree that we would want to report back on improvement in those administrative areas. And if you could tell us how many days are appropriate to provide that report back.
Do you have another spot audit planned?
Yeah, we do. We had to retool our audit team due to promotions. We had 3 of the 4 that are no longer there that did this spot audit. So we have done that. We're going to, first of the year, we'll start back, get everybody trained up. We actually had our folks get some training from IAID, and with this new crew, we need to do that. So we want to make sure that our audits are thorough and that, so that's going to take a couple of months. We just added 1 person last month, and then we're going to add another person before the end of the year. So first of the year, during the first quarter of the year, we'll have our next round of spot audits.
And Commissioners, we've just commenced our citywide net audit, so those results will also be coming to you within the next 6 months.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
I don't have any other questions.
Any other questions?
Yeah, up to. One on 5B and then go back to 5A. And they're basically simple. In both 5B, well, let's just start with 5B. The response is similar in each of the divisions. It says OSB concurs. The oversight was addressed with counseling and training was provided to the NED supervisors. That training was documented and verified. Does that mean that all of the supervisors got the training? So in other words, you're saying that we can't find one that didn't in all 4 places?
In terms of the training, yes, all the supervisors did get the training.
Okay, so if somebody was sick one day, they caught up to them the next day or whatever?
Yes, sir. Well, how we did it, we addressed the individual anomalies with those specific individuals,
Okay.
and we did bureau-wide training with all the supervisors, and we went over
Good.
the items in this particular
Okay, good.
audit that we
Okay.
fell short on.
And then on A, the A issue had to do with officers' completion and thorough accurate, but the training was done to the supervisors. My question is, how does it trickle down to the officers who actually were involved?
Yes, the January 8th training, we brought in the entire units. So it trickles down in 2 ways. The supervisors, when they're doing their jobs properly, will push that down to the officers. And then we did do a bureau training for all the personnel and get. And that's going to be an ongoing thing. We'll do that periodically. We're going to try to do it for next year, twice a year, where we actually bring our NED units in, we refresh them on just, setting the standards and the tone and provide that training. So we did that last year, or this year, and we'll do it again next year.
So again, you wouldn't find an officer that contributed to a 59% success rate. You wouldn't find one officer that didn't get this training or hear from the supervisor on it.
Correct, sir. And what we did at the bureau level, our bureau gang coordinator, basically we have the learning management system. So that training is entered and documented in the learning management system. So we verify.
Okay, I think that's good because that's what I intimated, what you said. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you say that these figures have improved substantially in these areas since this happened after the training because you're doing continual monitoring. Did I get that right or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Thank you, sir.
Well, then I move to approve this report with an oral report back from the department, just with respect to South Bureau and improvements made in these administrative areas in 60 days. Is that sufficient for the spot check, or 90?
90 would be better because
90
our people
days,
will be getting on board.
Yeah, although we understand that there will be a citywide audit, but 90 days.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that moves.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on item number 4, public comment period. We have 12 public comment cards.
12 cards?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll give everybody 2 minutes.
Okay. The first 6 speakers: Jacqueline Richardson, Harriet Elliott, Prentice Jenkins, the Red Chief Hunt, Ted Hayes, and Paula Miner.
In Calabasas, there are some people who operate GPS systems or wireless systems, and they violently attack other people in Los Angeles by wireless means. They get paid for doing this. Central Vision may know a little about it. In 2001, 2005, this is a different subject. There was an article in the Los Angeles Times about Los Angeles city personnel, that's approximate date, changing some of the histories of their personnel or applicants. I believe some of these people were Russian. It didn't say who the people were, but I guess it was police officers and other city personnel. Yesterday, the 23rd of November, Channel 4 or Channel 5 reported this black girl in Santa Monica called the police department for about a break-in. 19 officers responded. She was really afraid. They didn't know how to answer or address her problem. I don't believe these were real police officers. I believe they were holographs or computer-generated police officers who were run by programs and who look like anybody in this city. The officers could not help the young woman at all. They didn't understand anything about the problem.
Harriet Elliott.
Good morning.
Harriet Elliott. I listened to an expert talk about the disappeared in Latin America, and he said the family of the member that was killed became conservative. Well, this is not a normal, natural thing that the family members become conservative. So what it is intelligence, like the FBI, have infiltrated that family or the groups around that family. And I am exactly targeted like this myself. I'm a survivor of my son's disappearance 23 years ago, a black militant civil rights young left-wing person. And I am targeted. And in my different groups, I'm in CFI West. Rachel Senni, which was my best girlfriend, constantly tried to make me date. And I told her, cut it out. Don't you realize I'm trying to bring up the case about my son? I don't want to be thinking about that. And she wouldn't stop, okay? And I'm lucky enough to be in law school right now. I'm in my first semester. We're coming to end one more week. And right in front of me, always in my view from the teacher, is Frank Romero. He's LAPD. Once he started flirting with me, I told all the other students, he's police. Frank Romero is police. Okay? Well, they went like this. Oh, a young man flirting with an old lady? Oh, that is gross. Don't let me hear about it. Well, if you know about the People's College of Law, talk to Maria Vargas Rodriguez, and she'll say she made some calls. She was a judge for 13 years. She made some calls, and she found out that Frank Romero is in the police force. He's undercover, and this is what they're doing.
Prentice Jenkins.
This speaks to the issue of cops saying that people were grabbing their guns.
She spoke exclusively with them. Sarah? Well, Diana and Sade, quite a turnabout. All of the criminal charges against Marcus Jeter have been dismissed. 2 Bloomfield cops have now been indicted. A third quietly pleaded guilty to tampering and retired. It's all because of video the cops may have tried to hide. Get out the car! Get out! This is the Bloomfield Police Department's dash cam video that prosecutors say they never saw when they pursued criminal charges against 30-year-old Marcus Jeter. Notice his hands in the air. He was charged with eluding police, resisting arrest, and assault. And also notice who throws repeated punches. The tape hadn't surfaced.
I was going to be doing jail.
The incident began when cops were called to the Bloomfield home Jeter shares with his girlfriend. No charges were filed, and Jeter says he left after briefly talking to officers. They say you were eluding them.
When they were behind me with the lights on, I pulled.
Second police car that comes from the opposite direction. Process the media.
The glass gets busted, and all the glass goes in my face. Get out the car!
Your hands are up.
My hands are up. As soon as they opened the door, one of the officers reached in and just punched me in my face. As he's trying to take the seatbelt off, he's elbowed me in my jaw. And I'm like, ah. And he's like, stop trying to take my gun. Stop resisting arrest. Stop trying to take my gun. And as he's saying that, I just knew, and I was thinking back in my mind, like, okay, this is going to go wrong.
Prosecutors saw this video. They dismissed all of the charges. Again, had found no wrongdoing by police officers.
The blame is with the Bloomfield Police Department not providing that tape. If we hadn't had the tapes in this particular case.
Internal Affairs found no wrongdoing. Scandal plagued Internal Affairs.
The Red Chief Hunt.
Again, back on the record. Here's what I do know, that starting next year, all the police commissioners need to call back for the federal consent decree to keep the department accountable for what happens. We need an outside investigation other than Bustamante and Inspector General. Number 2, Chief Pacing, if you're in charge of operations or you are in charge of operations, accountability for false arrests, arresting people that work. Number 3, accountability for people who were killed in routine traffic stops. I don't believe that. I don't believe that should be happening. Number 4, Matt Johnson, you have to be accountable to the people. And here's what I'm going to say to you, that the public meetings are for the people. The Constitution of America, or the United States of America, said, we the people. So majority wins, and that's just like in any other democracy or democratic system. The Constitution says we are the people. So I hope come next year that you will adopt that philosophy. Pay signature. You're the oldest chief here. I'm holding you accountable. You were the first chief done by Chief Tom Bratton, who got us out the federal consent decree over there. You know a lot more than the rest of them. So get everybody's life and get the police department retrained, reframed, and back together so that these people won't be getting killed on routine traffic stops. People will not be getting arrested for going to work, and that the police commission, we need a civil seat up there for the people out in the community so we can ask questions as well to the chairs. So I want to see that done next year, the federal consent decree come back, and complete accountability, the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you.
Ted Hayes, followed by Paula Miner.
This binder is supposed to contain the material you have before you, but it's here in this room, and they don't allow us in this room until 9:30. So one of your items has about 40 pages. It's kind of hard to digest 40 pages while we're sitting here trying to engage ourselves here. Now, as I recall, the Brown Act says you may call for public testimony on an item before or during consideration of the item. But if you call public testimony before the item's being considered, people are speaking out of ignorance. They don't know what they're talking about because they haven't heard the comments presented to you by your staff and the officers. So if you want to keep people ignorant and not let them know what's going on, of course, have them come here and blabber about something they know absolutely nothing about. That's not fair. But that's the way Johnson sets it up. Have us talk about the item before the item is even being considered. Good for you, Johnson. You got to go, guy. Where do you go? So here's the thing. There are a number of attorneys on this body, and there's a bar association, numerous of them. We're going to file complaints against you attorneys, and you'll have to answer to the bar. You may get away, you may not, but at least you'll be considered by the bar based upon your action and absolute inaction when it comes to people like Johnson. So we're not going to accept a police state. Johnson wants to hide behind the police, have the police determine who can come back into the room, and things such as that. Well, I think you should, all of you, should be willing to stand up to whatever's happening and face the consequences. Do not hide behind the police state.
Paula Miner, and then the next speakers after that are Hamid Khan, Jamie Garcia, Mr. Pancake, Melina Abdullah, Pastor Jean Marie, and Jasmine Richards.
I would just like to comment on the letter that we submitted, the 3 organizations that regularly come to the commission meeting, Black Lives Matter, Stop LAPD Spying, and the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I'd like to know how we get responses to some of the concerns that the community brings here. We studied the function and role of the Police Commission as is listed online under the LAPD website. And basically it says that the Board of Police Commissioners sets the overall policy. The Board of Police Commissioners is the head of the police department. The board serves as the citizens' voice in police affairs and as a means of ensuring more responsive and effective city government. These are the statements that you present to us in your public online description of your function. So we need to know, how do we get responses? Because sometimes it appears as if we come here week after week and voice concerns, ask questions, ask for results, and you look at us with a little disdain or like we're an annoyance. But you are the citizen committee that we're supposed to come to. You are the group we're supposed to get an answer from, and never have I heard any responses to the things that we bring weekly. So again, we come here because we want to change. We're looking for a systemic change. We understand that it's difficult, and we plan to continue to come, but I would like to know how you can answer, how we can get some answers to some of the concerns that we raise.
Thank you. We'll get your response to your letter.
Hamid Khan.
Can you start my clock, please? Thank you. So I want to, in the demands that we have submitted, I want to go back to a comment that Chief Beck made earlier about officers being on tactical alert in response to the events in Paris. The LAPD has been on tactical alert since it was formed, because it's not just about any events in Paris, it's about events locally here that are considered to be events of insurgency. What is happening here is that after 9/11, this whole spiral of police state has been formed, where counterterrorism and counterinsurgency tactics have been increasingly codified. Suspicious activity reporting, drones, predictive policing, automatic license plate readers, high-definition cameras, digital receiver technology, stingrays, on and on and on. And it's changing these policing tactics. What is happening is that it's legitimizing speculative policing and hunch-based policing. These are the things that we've been raising with you over and over again. You have an inspector general who does an audit but denies that there is racial profiling, even with overwhelming evidence of racial profiling that is present. So at what point do you stop? For the last year and a half, we've been demanding that people in Los Angeles reject the use of drones by law enforcement. The state of North Dakota just passed legislation where they're going to equip police drones with non-lethal weapons, as if tasers and rubber bullets haven't killed people before. So here you have these killing machines sitting in the Inspector General's audit. We're demanding that they should be destroyed or they should be sent back to the manufacturer because people don't want it. We've been doing petitions. We've had over 3,000 signatures on the petition. We've done surveys. We're getting ready to release a report on December 8th, and we're going to bring that to you as well about the use of drones. You have the suspicious activity reporting. 31% of those SARs that go to fusion centers are filed on the black community in Los Angeles. And by the way, a U.S. Senate did a study on intelligence gathering at fusion centers, released that you went to, Matt Johnson, and you were speaking about it so highly, and they said that intelligence gathering was useless, irrelevant, outdated, duplicative, potential violation of civil rights violations.
Thank you for your comments.
Mike Downing that you spoke about, when he was asked about that study,
Thank you
he
for your
says there's a
comments.
lot
Your
of
time
white
is
noise
up.
but an occasional gold nugget.
Your
But he
time
couldn't
is up.
point to a single conviction out of those gold nuggets.
Thank
So
you. Your
you've got
time
to
is
stop
up.
just signing off on this thing and stop being a rubber stamp body.
Jamie Garcia.
Jamie Garcia, Stop LAPD Spying. So I just want to build on that as Chief Beck speaks on being prepared for a terrorist attack. But let's be sure that we understand that over 14 years, we have spent $14 trillion as a nation on the war on terror, and the world is more unstable. So how much has domestic law enforcement spent on this failed tactic? First, looking at LAPD, 52% of the unrestricted budget goes to LAPD. The Urban Area Security Initiative has granted $8 billion over 10 years to domestic policing. The 1033 program has given massive amounts of surplus military equipment to domestic law enforcement. The drones that were bought by the Seattle Police Department came from the Urban Area Security Initiative grant. Seattle didn't want them, and neither do we. And these drones, we will fight them. We will fight the use of drones here. This massive architecture of surveillance has the community of LA living in a police state with our every move being watched and files being opened on all of us, where presumptive policing allows officers to, through their own bias, through their own unconscious bias, believe what we might be doing. So we're in the age of thought crime. The Senate subcommittee also stated not one conviction has come from these fusion centers where warehouses of data that's been collected on the community exist. So how much longer will we create a police state rather than create a community? A community does not watch its neighbors with the intention of criminalization through programs like the See Something, Say Something program. With a budget like the police force, we could create a safe community free of terror.
Thank you.
The next.
Chief, is the LAPD using any drones?
No, Commissioner, we are not.
Thank you.
Okay. The next card. The next card I have is for Mr. Pancake.
Next comment, please.
He's walking in now. Mr. Pancake. You ready, sir?
You need to stop disrupting the meeting or you're going to be asked to leave. You are disrupting the meeting. You're going to be asked to leave. No more warnings. Next speaker.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. That's just a little bit. To Chief Paysinger, to the police commission. This is Mr. Pancake here. I have history with a number of your former officers, current, Paul Lawson, Daryl Maxwell, Willie White, Myrna Lewis. I'm ordained minister of the Church of God in Christ. Worked with the former mayor of Los Angeles, California, Tom Bradley. I have a few points here to bring before you. No drones, LA. I move for the continued grounding of these drones. We're dealing with a new generation of officers, PlayStation officers, Xbox officers. Let me leave that alone. I move for more sensitivity training for LAPD officers. I believe that 3/1/2015 could have been handled differently, involving Brother Africa. Move for the disciplined officers involved. Jackie Lacey, it's time to stand up. I would like to offer a definition of accountability, just kind of dwell on it. The measured performance, actions, and conduct against a prescribed set of standards. And number 4, I also move for more sensitivity toward the senior population, our veterans, and our homeless. Thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Melina Abdullah, followed by Pastor Q. Jan Marie and Jasmine Richards.
So I'm really dismayed by the ways in which you all are engaging and continue to engage. You know, you bog us down in these false narratives that everything is okay, that, you know, we heard the reports come out, police investigating themselves, saying that they're 100% compliant in certain areas. We know that regardless of your narrative, that Ezell Ford is still dead. Riddell Jones is still dead. Brother Africa is still dead. Alicia Thomas is still dead. And you sit there with smirks on your faces, Steve Soboroff, as if this isn't about real lives. This is about real lives. This is about people's lives. I just got back from Minneapolis. Your kind of false rhetoric is what fuels real terrorism on the ground. It's what fuels those white supremacists who think that the protesters are out here because we don't have anything better to do. We're not here because we don't have anything better to do. We're here because we're mothers. We're here because we are tied to our community and we care about the lives of our communities. So quit with the fucking smirking, Steve Soboroff. If that was your child who got shot yesterday, you wouldn't be smirking. I know the mothers whose children got shot in Minneapolis. I know the mothers whose children are killed by LAPD. This is about real fucking people. So when we give you our demands, we give you our demands because we love our people, and we cannot live in a state of terror anymore. We cannot. You must do something better. You're called on to do something better. And I'm sick of coming here and having to stand up for my humanity and their humanity, and you acting like we're just some people who don't have anything better to do. We're here because we love our people and we want something better, and you should want something better too. And you should make that happen. That is your job.
I'm Pastor Q, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Black Jewish Justice Alliance. As we have engaged this commission, it is clear that this commission functions as an LAPD liaison rather than a community accountability group or whatever it's supposed to be. It says this commission was set up in the 1920s, so I doubt there isn't any bias in it, according to its system and its structure. As it relates to the function of the commission on the website, I want to echo what has already been said. The commissioner's concerns are reflective of the community at large. Their priorities include implementing recommended reforms, improving service to the public by the department, reducing crime and fear of crime, and initiating, implementing, and supporting community policing programs. As a pastor, I can clearly see that this communities of color, are more sensitive to policing issues because our communities have been targeted and brutalized for decades. Whenever, as a pastor, whenever Jesus did something, whenever he healed somebody, it says he was moved with compassion. I don't think police and law enforcement and the police union deal with our communities with compassion. I think they have adhered to Donald Trump type of logic. 81% of white people are killed by black folks. That's what he said, and that was clearly untrue. It was rhetoric. Lastly, we no longer expect compassion from the police commission, but you guys will keep seeing our faces until the system is changed. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is live.
Jasmine Richards.
I didn't even want to get up here and speak, but I felt compelled once I seen my spiritual mother cry. Steve, you're a disrespectful motherfucker. And that's all. I'm just going to say what everybody else is thinking. You're so fucking disrespectful. How can you sit there when people are hurting? Where's your empathy? Where's your humanity, Steve? Look at me when I'm talking to you. Because this is not for anybody else up here. This is just for you because I'm looking at white, racist, white supremacy. I'm looking at it in its face. And I can see the evilness in your face, Steve. You got to run away from the truth, huh? Because the truth hurts. You can't sit there without fidgeting. You give nobody respect. You and Beck, when that black man was talking, that black officer, you didn't even give him any respect. It's just something about black people, huh? It's something about us that you don't like. But you know what? We're going to rise up, Steve. We're going to rise up, and you're going to be the first one I come after.
Are you threatening me?
That's not a threat.
Are you threatening me?
Not a threat.
Say it again loud.
It's not a threat.
Okay, because if you're threatening me, you got a lot of trouble, lady.
Steve, I'm here every Tuesday, right? This how I come at you.
You threaten me
I come
once.
at you with your shit.
Threaten me
I
once.
come in this mic and I talk to you. This how I come at you.
You threaten me
I got you
once.
hot and bothered now, huh, Steve? Yeah, you made my spiritual mom cry, so now I'm about to make you cry. Fuck you, Steve. And I'm going to just sit here and cuss you out because I don't give a fuck. I'm so tired of you. I'm really tired of you. You evil. You evil. And God's vengeance is great. You know he's going to smite your old ass, right? He's going to smite you. Hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, they're going to eat you up, Steve. I promise you. My ancestors is coming after you. You looking in my face? I promise you. I promise you. Now let's just sit here and look at each other, because now I'm getting respect.
And there are no other public comment cards. We're now on item number 5, and we do have one comment card for 5. We have Prentice Jenkins.
Restraining order and everything. She's right there. She's nuts.
You may begin, Mr. Prentice.
Order, please.
Okay.
Order, please.
So this meeting was civil until Mr. Soboroff decided to smirk at people. This is what happens when you decide to mess with people who got nothing else to lose. 1992, civil unrest, riots happen. When you mess with people who got nothing to
We're
lose.
on item number 5, sir. Closed session.
Dismissal, and this is officer-involved shootings. We'd like to know how many of these officers were dismissed, if you're saying you're actually dismissing officers. We don't know how many were dismissed. It says 8 police officers, 2 sergeants, and 6 police officers. What's that? Number 2? I don't know what that means. But are you actually dismissing these officers? We know you didn't dismiss the officers who killed Zell Ford. So it's evident that you're not dismissing these officers. So you talk about public employee discipline, dismissal, release, public employee performance evaluation, but you're actually not dismissing the officers. You're putting killer cops back on the street. And then guys like people walking down the street, they open fire like a drive-by shooting. I didn't know cops could do drive-by shootings. But these cops did on a man. They did a drive-by shooting on a man. And they're still on the force. They were not dismissed like this says right here. Those cops are still on the force who murdered a man. Man's mother's weeping. Folks, Black Lives Matter. It's here every week trying to find out why you haven't dismissed these cops and put them up on charges. I walk down the street all the time. You walk down the street all the time. He does. He's in a suit this time. They don't know he's a cop. He could be somewhere else and get shot. He's black.
Any other comments? No, sir. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A, B, and C in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 5B was not discussed. Mr. President, is there a motion for adjournment?
We have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
I'm Jen Mahoney in Studio City. You're watching LA City View Channel 35, where you can get the best in culture and arts. It's our city, it's our channel.
Hey, just go!
Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. Well, the book I'm holding in my hand is a